Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.
All right, well, welcome everyone to this special session of the Select Board. This is a work session on water and sewer budgets, and it is Wednesday, June 22nd, and we are in the fire facility. My name is Jeannie Jenkins, and I have the pleasure of chairing this board, and I'll ask my fellow board members to introduce themselves.
Hi, Barry Corey.
Hi, Tom Haley.
Good evening, I'm Jim Carroll.
I'm Jean Connor.
Bruce Lee Clark.
Thank you very much. And also with us this evening is Stu Hurd, our town manager, Nancy Lively, who takes excellent minutes for us, and Jim Vyers on the Cat TV camera. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stu.
Yes, please.
And let's go.
All right. We're here tonight to talk about our water resources budgets, the water and sewer fund budgets. These budgets are basically enterprise funds, so we treat them like a business. We don't look at a lot of accruals and things like that. This is more direct than what we see with the general highway and fire funds. This year we're proposing a water fund budget that is increasing 5%. We did work very hard to keep it in that range, but because right now, as you all know, inflation is running at 8.6% as of the last number I saw. The sewer fund, we were at 10.5%. Again, we worked very hard to hit that target. You recall that 4 years ago, we talked about a 10.5% increase over 4 years to build up the necessary depreciation in the sewer fund to get to the levels where it should be. We have hit that target, but we are using some of the fund balance, about $100 and some odd thousand, to do that. So overall, the 5% increase in the water fund, 10.5% increase in the sewer fund, actually when combined, if you're on municipal water and sewer, ends up being 8.3% overall. So it is a match to inflation. Inflation is impacting almost every facet of our budgeting. Materials costs are up, equipment costs are up, there are delays in receiving materials and equipment many times. So this is going to be a very interesting year for my staff, RJ and Larry, to pull us through it. Joining us is John DeMoore. He's the chief operator at the wastewater treatment facility. And of course, you know Michelle Johnson, Dan Monks, and Melissa Currier, our finance director, has actually taken a seat at the main table, anticipating she may get some questions. So there's not a lot else to say. As I said, we are using some of the fund balance to bring the sewer budget into the range we projected. Our insurance costs, those kinds of stabilized costs, are up slightly because we have increased our property values. Our workers' comp is once again down. I don't know whether you understand the workers' comp mod, but our mod is running at 0.85%, which is better than average. Average is 1. So what does mod mean? It's a modifier. It's a measurement of your injuries to lost time. And so we work very safely. Our folks are doing a great job. And that modifier, every time that modifier drops, you save money on your workers' comp insurance. So that's where we are. I don't see a need to really get into the weeds, and you folks have all of the detail we've provided, and want to just get to questions. That would be the way to do it.
Okay. So do you guys have anything you want to share with us before we ask you questions?
I just want to, I totally agree with Stu. It's tough right now because before you know it, you're paying a high cost for everything we use. And if you can get it at all, it just multiplies by the day and month. It's horrible right now. We can't really, it's tough to stay within the budget. We're definitely cutting corners to get what we need at this point. So, it's in this coming year it'll be worse because we didn't have a full year of the inflation being this high. So it's going to be tough to stay in balance. The toughest yet for me.
Both departments use a lot of chemicals in each department: chlorine, bisulfite, lime, CO2, and everything is going up, and there's trucking surcharges on everything. So everything's, we use, 16,000 gallons of chlorine at wastewater, and it went up 60 cents a gallon. That adds up drastically. And it's not, and then you got the oil and fuel and propane and electricity. Everything just keeps rising.
All right, now you're scaring us.
The only reason I'm jumping in is because the question that I have kind of relates to what you just said. And I realize that some of the cost increases are inflation. Are some of them related to COVID, and do you see those, the ones that are related to COVID, improving or lessening the cost?
I think some of the supply chain issues are related to COVID. Those people that went out of work for all that time are now kind of catching up. They ran out of stuff in their warehouses, and now they're back to manufacturing, but they're like way behind. So if you need a certain valve or an electric valve, for instance, for the Morgan Springs filling station, that has been on order now for 6 months, and it's probably not due in until the end of July. We've made a way to use it without it, but that valve was should be like a week out normally,
Wow.
and now it's been 6 to 7 months.
So we may see some improvement, may. Okay,
Hopefully.
yeah, thanks.
Other questions?
Yeah, I've got one.
Okay.
Stu, in the highlights, line 41-50900.720, talks about real estate that the town owns in Pownell, Woodford, and Stamford. Is there a reason why we're hanging on to those properties?
Yes, there is. The lands we own in Woodford encompass the water filtration plant, for instance, and a portion of the lands up near Sucker Pond, which was one of our original water sources. The lands in Stamford are all related to the Sucker Pond area. Pownell, we actually own a woodlot, and then there's a woodlot that comes into Woodford as well. Some 420 acres, I think, combined, if I've got it right.
Roughly.
And we are logging those now. And the monies that come from those managed woodlots are going into the capital facilities reserve. We anticipate.
I'll do more than anticipate. We've made so far pretty close to 48,000 on the Woodford lot, and there's still probably a year and a half left. So it's slow income. It's not a big lump sum often, but it's every week we get checks. For,
Well, the estimated value that I didn't mention for those three pieces is $40,290, and if we're making $48,000 a year, I don't know whether you could call that profit.
Well, now, Jim, remember, the 720, which you're looking at, includes the operating permit for the water treatment plant, and that costs us $31,000.
Okay.
So all of these parcels, well, the two parcels in Pownell and Woodford that we're currently logging are in the current use program now. So the taxes that we were paying have dropped substantially because we now have a forest management plan. Thank you, RJ. And we're working with the county forester to make sure those get logged properly. The Pownell lot is just out to bid. We're anticipating
the
bids.
walk is Monday for the potential bidders.
And that could be in.
Are you replanning?
No.
No. You're just going to clear them?
Right now, we're basically Woodford, we're culling the smaller stuff so that the bigger and better stuff gets healthier.
We have a very nice plan if you're interested in
Sure.
the hobby.
Yeah.
So we
Like in 100
anticipate.
acres, there may be 4 different treatments. No great big clearings. It's just maybe a 4-acre clearing here. depends on what the existing wood is. The state forester is free to municipalities, which is awesome. They work very hard for us, and we don't have to pay that expense. And they put together a really good package for the management for the long term. You know, it's planned for like 100 years, other than just go.
So how many years do you think you'll get logging out of there?
It'll be done probably every 12 years for who knows when.
But the length of the time that you'll be supplied with trees, how many years?
It's designed to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Keeps, right. It's sustainable.
Okay.
So indefinite.
Good.
It's just not designed to go and get as much money as we can and then address it 50, 60 years from now. It should be a work in progress, always moving, something going on all the time.
Okay, thank you.
And approximately, like the Pownell lot is $450 for land taxes for the year. The Woodford lot is $4,200 for the year. And Stamford is $1,346 for the year. So the line item has a lot of other things in it. Operator certification, CDL reimbursements, wastewater discharge, and the permit to operate. So that covers everything in that $40,000.
Thank you.
So we're actually making money.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Love to hear that.
So it's more like $6,000.
About $6,000 in land taxes each year.
Right.
Because we did put it in the land use, so it knocked them down drastically.
And part of the Woodford tax bill includes the water filtration plant and the land that it sits on.
That's why that one's $4,200, because of the building and the structure that's on it, whereas the other are just land.
And is that why this land is essentially in this budget as opposed, I mean, the forest land doesn't strike me as, I mean,
Well, the lands are owned by the water.
The water
that's
company.
that would be helpful to know.
So thus we use,
Got it.
we pay those taxes out of this. Also in Woodford is the intake, and there's a 500,000 gallon tank up in the woods that
Right.
sends our water down to the treatment plant. So the Woodford taxes are higher because we have facilities on those properties. The Pownell land and the Stamford land are basically open land. Wooded land, but.
Yeah.
Great.
Good.
Other questions? Yes.
Yes. This may seem like a weeds question, but in both budgets, let's say under the water fund, it's 41,500.153. It's pension expense. Could someone explain to me why the actual in both of them for fiscal year 2021 was essentially 3 times what, I mean, I'm just curious as to what was going on then, and therefore why the budget. I get why we pay pensions. That's not a problem for me at all. My question is just why is it 79,912 for one and
21
the other
actual.
one is 88,864 actual. What happened? I don't remember seeing that last year. And if you can't answer that question on the spur of the moment, don't worry about it. Just let me know later.
I will need to let you know later. It's definitely a question for me.
That's a question for you too? That makes me feel good. I have one other that I remembered raising a year ago, and I tried to look for it again today, or for this one, and I couldn't find it. It was under wastewater treatment. It had to do with the cost of disposing of the disposable wipes that got flushed down the toilet. And I know that we separate them out now. I remember seeing the separator.
Under 5480,560 is where that would be.
5485, well, okay.
So that is a charge for approximately $5,000 a year that we're paying to dispose of those.
About $5,000?
Yep.
Was that?
That goes to Casella, the transfer
because
station.
it just got to go into
Yep,
the
waste stream.
waste stream. have we ever communicated the cost to people? I don't remember seeing anything on our water bills, and we talked about it a year ago. Using the water sewer bills to communicate with our customers about things that they could do that would save us money. This may not be the thing to put on it, but I'm wondering why we
have to
don't.
add programming to NEMRIC to be able to enter something else on our bill.
It's not an easy task because our, as you know, the water and sewer bills come pre-printed and sealed.
Yep.
We can put a minor amount of.
Yes, we can put a small, I'm not even sure, a sentence or so, but because of the format that we use, this postcard self-sealed.
Yes, that self-sealed mailer.
We would not be able to put something in there. It would have to be a separate mailing.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to kill trees in order to send.
I wonder if Jonah could put something though on the website. I think a lot of people are following the website lately.
Well, that's a good point, RJ. We could probably take a look at that.
And my suspicion is that amongst the brains that are here that deal with this stuff all the time, there are other things that the customers could do.
The rags are horrible for the system. They are creating issues all throughout the system. They catch on the clay tile pipe is 100 years old, and it's got rough seams in places, and they'll catch on it, and they won't break down like toilet paper would, and they just start building and create backups and plugs.
So in essence, the disposal of it from our separator is about $5,000.
Yep.
But the actual cost may be
more with jetting and sewer calls, and most sewer calls we're finding have to do with the rags. And since COVID, it has been worse.
There's a story for Jonah.
Needles is a big one lately.
But what is?
Needles.
Oh, yeah.
And are they actual rags?
Well, they're like either Clorox wipes or baby wipes, or a lot of them are like Clorox
rags.
Wipes or
Yeah.
Lysol wipes.
Right.
It's basically anything other than toilet paper.
Yes, that's the only thing that should be flushed.
Right.
Bruce, can we go back to your question? Was that a pension expense question or a health insurance cost question?
It's pension expense, and it's just the actual is about 4 times, or a little less than 4 times what the budget was. If you want, I've got the numbers, but it just strikes me, as odd, and I didn't know quite what to do with it.
No, that's a great question, and sometimes it'll come to me, just need more time, I think.
It's perfectly okay. This is not a gotcha time. It was a curiosity question for me. So if nothing else, I think we need to communicate. I'm going to urge the town to communicate with the customers, because this is in fact a customer use issue, to communicate with our customers about what should be flushed, and despite what anything says on that canister about biodegradable, don't flush
flushable.
Get Jonah in on it too.
Yeah, Jonah, this is a place, I agree. I think it's a place for Jonah and the town to communicate with customers. People complain about the cost of this, the sewer bills. And quite frankly, this is one way they can help. A lot. Even more than the $5,000 to send us the ones we separate.
Most of the backups, really.
Yep.
I
Okay.
think that's enough for that.
Okay, Jim, you had another question?
Yeah, RJ, under buildings, line, it's in the water fund highlights, but the specific line is 41-5910.760. And in it, the body of it says the electric use is estimated to increase this year to the addition of 1 new pump station on Chapel Road, among other things. But the central question that I have has nothing to do with that. It's about, exploring the use of, or employing the use of solar panels to collect energy. Has that ever been discussed? Because you got a lot of roof space there.
We do, and I've asked that same question because I think, I know nothing about solar, but I thought it would be a great place, and I'm told that metal buildings are designed with cameras for a certain load and for snow load. And I don't think they're designed for that weight, is the answer I got several years ago. It's been a while.
Who did you get that from?
It's been a while. It had been Larry McLeod, actually, at the time.
Well, solar installers will actually come to your house and give you an estimate at no cost if you use their panels. And they would be able to quickly diagnose whether or not you could bear that load or, you know, some part of it.
Jim, we've seen the solar installers have no idea what structural limitations there are on buildings. We require them to get a structural engineer. They squirm and they don't like that. We require it before we let them put anything on any buildings in town.
We did look at it, doing it at wastewater on the compost building, and we were going through the upgrade, and I forget his name. He came.
FEMA looked at it.
That was a power guru.
Yeah, Power Guru.
Power Guru, yeah, he was coming in and planning it. However, it was all the timing was gonna happen during the upgrade, and then we haven't heard from him since, but.
Well, so there is a new owner for
He
Solar,
passed, yeah.
Power Guru, Solar Pro, so
Yep.
it's probably worth checking
It just
in with
couldn't
them.
happen at the same time as the upgrade.
Right.
Okay.
And
That's a-
it
yeah.
got really busy very quick.
So we could take a look at that.
That'd be great.
I think that's a good idea.
That would be great.
That would be,
Yep.
that would be good.
I'm wondering if there are any other, besides wipes and needles, if there are any other sort of emerging concerns that you see at the sewage treatment plant? that we should-
Some of the new limits that are coming down the pipe, a phosphorus limit, if our new permit has a phosphorus limit that's gonna be lower than what we can meet with the process that we're using right now, we're gonna have to use a chemical. That chemical, John, I think was what, $3 a gallon? And we're looking at a couple hundred gallons a day. And it would end up being about $240,000 in a budget year.
Is that this year?
No.
No, okay.
But if that does come down the pipe, that is something that we'd be looking at. And a lot of it is based around the Champlain Valley and some of the new
Right.
water quality standards that they've come up with up there,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
And the other thing that we talked about in our agenda meeting, I actually included it in my manager's report for the board for Monday night, where we've seen a rise in the BOD levels, biochemical oxygen demand. And John brought that to our attention through staff. We've got some high generators of BOD. People who manufacture dairy products generate high BOD levels.
Right.
Breweries, distilleries, restaurants, a whole host of organics are generated. So you'll see it in my manager's report. What we are doing is we're going to be identifying initial 10 companies. We're going to go out and sample their discharges to see whether or not they're contributing in excess of BOD to the plant. The amount of BOD coming into the plant is not controlled, if I'm correct. It's the effluent that leaves the plant. And we have a permit limit that last May we came within 7 milligrams per liter of exceeding. 30 milligrams per liter is our limit. We hit 23, which was a high for us. We're generally in the 11 range, if I remember all your notes that you sent.
We're generally, high single digits to low teens.
So we have a concern that if we start spiking on BOD, that's going to become a permit issue for us.
Now, as far as these emitters go, do you have any, is there anything on the books that, about code enforcement with them?
Yes, we have a sewer use ordinance. We didn't, because they were, as they came into the community, they were so disparate. We weren't looking at their loadings, more their gallons used. But now we because there are many more of them, I think the combined impact is causing us problems. And so we may be looking for some of the worst offenders, if there are worst offenders, to pre-treat their waste. So when their waste comes out, they're going to have to install some sort of a wastewater treatment facility online.
So what's the estimated increase in cost per operation for the town?
Well, I don't know. If we had to address BOD, I wouldn't even dare speculate.
We will be adding, one item in here is some aeration. It's, that will help with our BOD. That will knock down the oxygen demand. On our effluent side, it will not help the influent at all. So nothing's going to help the influent other than the customers pre-treating, the breweries or the cheese makers or dairy. They would have to pre-treat to knock down the influent. But through the plant, if we can add oxygen in different places with aeration, then that will help. And we have in here about $9,000 to add aeration just before the RBCs and the splitter box to try to help the DOs through the RBCs, and that will help the bugs do a better job and knock everything down.
And that's a one-time expense for $9,000?
Well, it's $9,000 for the pump, the piping, and then there'll be a blower running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so we'll add a little bit to the electricity. But yeah. We have multiple blowers running throughout the plant, so.
I think the biggest concern is we're going to be out of compliance if we get much more. We're teetering right now.
And we're lucky that the weather is cool.
That's another thing, though. It's another reason we need the sand filter running all the time and an upgrade on that also.
And that sand filter upgrade replacement is next year? Is that?
Well, it's not in this budget.
Right.
Yeah.
I noticed that.
Boy, that was a really good response. Would you care to?
It's in design. It is in design, and it will be ready if the infrastructure money does come down the pipe. We're hoping to be able to have access to that for that project.
So that hopefully that'll be federal infrastructure.
Yes, hopefully.
Money. Good.
Did this very suddenly spike, or has it been building over time?
It's been building.
It's been building.
Yeah.
When did you start to see it really slow?
Wait, so can you hear him?
No.
John, you're going to have to.
I think with COVID, you started seeing more and more people coming in, and then as the places opened up also, it's dropped off here.
Yes, Jim.
Other than pre-treating, is there anything a company can do to mitigate the effluent of BOD? Is that accurate?
From their facility, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, other than stopping production, that's not an option, but is there anything they can do?
A brewery, for instance, you see the sacks of the grain outside. That's kind of a process of some pre-treatment. That's getting some of the solids out versus just discharging that all to the sewer. So that's one step of pre-treatment, adjusting the pH or adding air to knock down the BOD before it leaves the facility, whether they put it in a holding tank or use their vats to control what they got to do before they discharge it to the sewer. Testing, they can test their pH before it leaves. pH is very easy to adjust. It's the BOD getting rid of that. So it may take a few days with aeration to try to help knock down the BOD before they discharge it.
Okay.
There's some not flushing that we know of.
Okay.
So it's not like everyone's dumping everything down the sewer. Right. But they're struggling. The ones that aren't, they're disposing it in other places, farms.
Animals,
So
Animals
I think
eat it?
Dan wanted to hop in.
We do have one example in town, the distillery, the vast majority of their
They feed it to cows.
is maintained on site and then give it to the farmers. So they're not dumping significantly into our system.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about like adjusting their production schedule or, something like that.
It's when they, it's the beer is separate. Obviously, they're going to sell that, and that's going away. It's the byproduct of I'm not completely familiar with the process, but the mash and the liquid that's in the mash, and then the chemicals they use to rinse the tanks and clean the tanks, because one's very alkaline and one's very acidic. So if you put it all in an equalization tank, then they kind of mesh and work out.
Equal-
But there's still
cancel
a
each
lot
other
of BOD in that liquid.
Okay,
And
but,
it kills our bugs that treat the sewage over at the plant. It actually cleans the plant,
Oh.
as crazy as that sounds.
Which isn't a good thing.
Which isn't what we want.
Thing that could happen.
We need
but
the bugs.
all of what you just said is going to cost them money.
Yes.
It's not.
And there
Just-
is actually we did mail out or email the application. There was a funding for pretreatment for breweries and different companies. We did send that out last year to everybody
Okay,
that could take advantage of it.
thank you.
Other questions? Yes.
Let's go, I think it's along the same line. It's the discussion in the highlights around treatment plant operating supplies and the increase. New to the list is 10,000 for high carbon wood ash to improve our composting. Can you just go through that a little bit for me?
Yep.
So I think I get it, but.
We were meeting EQ biosolids for our composting, which means we can dispose of it anywhere. We can add it to our topsoil pile, and we don't, and we do that.
Right.
They changed the rulings a little on testing, and we needed to bring the temperature up higher for a longer period, and the wood ash, we had a lady, I can't remember the name of the company, come in, but and suggested that. So she gave us some, and we tried it, we added it to it, and we could track that plug through the system, and it worked great. So by doing this, it makes it so that we don't have to pay to bring that to a landfill. Otherwise, our compost potentially would be hauled off and have to go to a landfill somewhere. But by doing the $10,000 wood ash, it makes it back to an EQ biosolid that can be reused.
Excellent.
So it's money well spent.
Yes, it is. Yeah. That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure.
Any other questions? Yes, Gary.
2 questions. Where does the compost go?
Compost, right now, we bring it to Holton Lane, up behind the transfer station, and once a year or twice a year, whenever we rent the big screen, we mix it in with all the leaves and the stuff the dirt we dump up there, and we make our own topsoil that we use on projects like Washington Avenue or Maple Street, soon to come. Or
Actually, it starts with the brush that you bring to the dump. We get that ground up as fine as possible with no chunks, and that goes to the sewer plant. The sewer plant uses that for compost to treat with the sludge, the dry sewage, and it stirs up with a big rototiller, and that comes out the end. It gets put in its own bay. It gets tested to make sure it passes, and then we truck it up to Holton Lane. And so we have a big circle going with recycled material, and topsoil is what comes out at the end.
Great. I had one other question for Melissa. It's the same one I asked last year.
depreciation.
The budget for 2021 was $3,208,000, and the actual was $2,524,000. And I think I asked you this question last year, and you explained it to me. This is on page 3 of 3 of the water fund.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the total of all funds. So there's about 700,000 difference in what the budget was versus what the actual was. And can you tell me again why we budget for the larger number rather than that smaller number?
Well, I'm not sure that you guys did this last year. Maybe I'm not remembering, sorry. You probably would know better than I would, but, so this number here, the 3.2 million, that,
Are the assets in there?
yes. So that number for the budget for FY21 is going to include the transfer to reserve, which is made up of both actual transfers to reserve that we're using to build our reserves and the capital asset purchases. So once we need the funding for that, so it has to be a part of our budget so that it's included in the rates. And and that we are able to build that cash flow to actually go out and make those purchases. But those items all move to our balance sheet. So capital asset, for example, which is a little easier to understand, would actually go to our balance sheet at the full cost with that asset value. But what ends up showing up as our actual expense is just the year's worth of depreciation, which will be much smaller than that.
Yeah, I think you did it last year because depreciation is always the thing.
Right, well, it always comes back to depreciation.
So will that be similar for next year?
Yes, that will be every year.
Okay.
So the reserve part of that, the depreciation part of that is building our fund balance, which is a conversation that we've been having for a number of years. And budgeting for depreciation or even the reserves helps build our cash reserves to make sure that we have the money behind the numbers that are on paper. If we don't do that, then it's just numbers on paper.
And that fund balance is the 5 million, is that right?
That's in the wastewater.
That's in the wastewater.
Yeah, the water fund balance is higher than that.
Yes, I touched on that today. I think it's around 21. But remember, the fund balance is made up of not only reserves or cash, but also our assets, which are, you know, also our builder, waterway, our treatment plants. Yeah.
So then that question that we always ask you every year that you do cringe at, is there any way to decrease the cost to the taxpayers using some of the cash assets that we have, because it's an 8.3% increase?
Well, yes, we certainly can, but as you know, I highly advise against it. We have worked long and hard in changing the way that we run the water and sewer, or how we manage the financials since about 2014, so that with the goal in mind that the next time we have to do a treatment plant upgrade, that we would hopefully not have to have these large 10.5% increases, or in the case of the water treatment plant, it was 11 to 14% increases. And also the goal is to build a reserve so that when we have projects either planned, again, so that they don't impact the rate payers by up and down rates, but that we are able to manage it. But also when we have unplanned things, such as the most recent one.
In the sewer fund. So we haven't done the project yet, but we did have a major sewer break on Benmont and while excavating it. Sorry, not to take it. Just want to go in a little bit more. So this is a perfect example of an unplanned project. It's a 15-inch sewer main that runs completely full. It takes 3/4 of the town of Bennington through that 15-inch sewer. While excavating it, we got down, and to come to find out, it was just the clay main collapsed. It broke apart and it just kept collapsing. So we excavated about 26 feet of it, and we put in new pipe, but the pipe that we hooked onto is still just cracked and crumbling. So we stuck plastic down it. It's a Band-Aid, and it's a good Band-Aid, but it could last, it could break tonight or it could last 2 years. But no, that unfortunately the diameter of that pipe is just too small. It runs completely full. Right, brimming full. The manholes are actually surcharged, so we wouldn't be able to slip line that one because we can't upsize the pipe during slip lining. So the diameter of the pipe actually needs to be increased, but the pipe is just in horrible shape. It's actually like, it's not round anymore. It's 4 pieces of crescent-shaped pipe, and it's just ready to collapse. We televised it, and it's not, the whole thing is just not good. So it's in design right now. Part of the ARPA money is we're getting that project designed, and we'll be talking to Stuart about what we can do to fund that project.
That's,
And
that's a great example, and it does, I mean, it's been less than 10 years, right, that we've actually not been really focusing on making sure we had
Yeah,
reserves
it's in that
place.
range.
2014 is when
Yeah.
they started.
Yeah.
They started with the water fund first.
Well, I think it's when we were first on the board.
I think so.
Yeah,
2014.
yeah, I think it
That
was,
was that 14?
it was under,
So for years, we kept the rates artificially low, but we were not building our fund balance, we were not building our reserves, we were not budgeting for depreciation.
yeah. So it's fairly, I mean, it's fairly new that we're doing this, and I do think to keep us from having rates go like this is really important, and to be ready when something comes up.
Absolutely. So the estimate that Larry has given me is about $500,000 to repair just the sewer portion. That doesn't include a couple $100,000 or so to repair the road for RJ's budget. So, you're looking at almost $1 million to do this. Now, we talk about, or we have mentioned, the $5 million fund balance. Remember, that includes the assets that we have. That's not cash. But we don't have $5 million of cash, or even, $2 or $3 million that is just sewer related. The cash that we have is shared among all of the funds, and we are definitely have turned the corner. We're definitely building our cash reserves so that we actually have the money behind the reserves that are on our books. And we do have it, so that if something like this happens, we can do that. We can take care of it if we need to. But I think it's important to keep moving in that direction. And I guess I'd like to point to the water fund as the successes. We started working on that sooner than the sewer fund. And I feel like the water fund shows a success this year where we were able to keep, not easily, but we're able to keep the increase down at 5%, and we have an over 8% inflation rate. And we also are able to continue putting money into the ongoing projects on the south end, as well as fund our reserves while weathering what we're going through right now. We're not seeing that yet with the sewer fund, but we're almost there. We're in that last year of that 10.5%. In a few more years, I think we're going to see the same results, that it's going to be easier. It's just really difficult right now, and I think we should stay with it.
Thank you all staff for that incredible work.
And don't forget,
Thank you.
Bennington County Street isn't the only old.
RJ.
Old clay pipe that's there.
Really?
Slip lining, as Jim mentioned, is an absolute great thing. It's very cheap for what you're getting. You're getting a brand new pipe without excavation, and all the taps are there, everything. Yep, slip lining is taking it's a fiberglass resin coated pipe, and it comes inverted. We bypass pump the section they're going to slip line, and they blow the sleeve through it, and it actually just goes inside out, and then it's heat cured. They run steam through it for a few hours, depending on the size of the pipe. A small pipe only takes 3 or 4 hours, but like the 30-inch pipe at Morgan Springs that we did took like 12 hours of steam to cure that. The liner ended up being like an inch thick on that 30-inch pipe.
Wow.
So you got a rugged pipe that's good for like 100 years, so you should never have to, we'll never have to worry about it in our lifetime.
Somebody will, but not you.
So, and it's relatively cheap for what you're doing. Like we did, Main Street is slip line from Depot Street up to Silver Street, basically. And that's all been slip lined, and you wouldn't even know. They come in a day and it's done. So, but the diameter of the pipe makes a big difference. If it's only running half full, you can do that. But you're going to put a liner that's 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch thick in it, you're going to decrease the size of the main. So if it's already running full,
You can't do
full, you can't slip
Can't
line
do
it.
that.
You have to increase the size of the pipe, which is the case on Benmont and County Street. So,
We always learn so much.
Yeah.
so unfortunately, that's not a slip lining candidate.
Nope.
Great. Other questions?
Yeah, if it's running full, you probably want to upsize that pipe anyway.
Yes, we're actually going to increase that. And the design is going from a 15 to 24. And it actually would be tying into a 24 down by Bennington Tire. That's where that starts, is 24 inch. So it's 20, 36, 30, and 24 all the way from the sewer treatment plant. So we would be extending the 24 up Benmont from basically Bennington Tire to County Street and then up County Street to Depot Street. So,
Yeah.
and Depot Street actually has a 15 and an 18 that comes across it. So they're two large diameter mains, and it all dumps into a small 15-inch.
Oh,
So
that doesn't sound
just
good.
No, it's just
No.
not a good scenario.
I'm not a civil engineer, and I can gather that's
Yeah.
not a good idea.
So,
Yeah.
Great. Other questions? Yeah.
I don't really have a question. I really do appreciate your strategy and what you've implemented. And the way I think about it in very simplistic terms is it's like having a savings account. And it's much cheaper if you have a little bit of savings to pay for the car repair rather than having to use a credit card and pay the interest. So it really does benefit all of us that we have this reserve, and we need to keep working on it. Because in the long run, it might not seem like it, but it will end up saving us money.
I am sure that the people who put in the 15-inch pipe thought that that was going to be perfectly fine. And as it turns out, it's not. And things age. We need that fund. We need the money to be able to do that. It's actually paying as we go, actually a little bit more, so that we can actually pay as we go in the future, which is what we should be doing.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have to say, when I was handed this, I opened the envelope with some trepidation because I was really expecting a much larger increase request from you guys. And just to give the public an idea of the kind of work you guys had to do to reach these numbers, could you maybe go over that process a little bit, maybe the areas you preferred to get some more money, but you didn't?
I mean, there was obviously things in here that we put in as wish list items, and, with the budget season, John and the water crew put everything together, what they want, and we kind of work through it and see where we're at. And there's things that were wish lists that we could cut out or put off to a couple more years that, they're not going to affect the process, or they're not, they'd be great. So one of them is like a $40,000 emergency power for the moving the primary digesters over to emergency power. Yes, it would be nice, especially because this winter it went out for, what was it, 12 hours? 8 or 10 hours we had a power outage. And some things froze up, but we did learn something from that, and we need to keep them thawed out while that's going. Who would have guessed that it was going to be 8 to 10 hours for them to freeze, and it was freezing cold out. It was like 10 degrees that day that it was out. So, but we took that out of the budget and we put it off. We'll work on it maybe next budget or the budget after.
When do you guys start working on the budget?
About March.
Yeah.
Start getting numbers and trying to get estimates on different projects or different things that we're looking to do. And then it's kind of back and forth with Melissa and I and RJ and narrow it down. And then Stu gets it.
And actually, I have to say, this year it came to me pretty much where I would have ended up. Melissa, RJ, and Larry really worked very hard to bring these budgets in where you see them here. So when it came to me, I didn't have to do a lot. Had a few small suggestions, but really, I think I've trained them well.
Trained Melissa well.
I don't know.
Yes, Melissa's my guard dog now. So.
All right, so this is a work session. Do you need action from us
If
tonight?
you are ready to act, a motion to adopt both budgets would be appreciated. We will then, what the rates are projected to be, but we will put those on probably the first meeting in July, where we'll set the tax rates and adopt the water sewer rates. But if you adopt the budgets tonight, then we can move into that phase.
All right. Are people comfortable doing that this evening?
I am.
Someone want to make the motion?
I'd be happy to move that we adopt both the water budget and the sewer budget as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so
you.
very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, folks.
I'll look forward to an email from Melissa about that.
Yeah. So, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, so, well, second.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're good.
Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.